Hi, I'm Dave Sheehan, and in this episode of The Wellness Project, I'll be talking about strategies to cope with mental fatigue with Cathy Slarks, who is a spiritual care practitioner from Bowen Health. Then my good friend from Ireland, Aubrey Gowing, president of the Irish Massage Therapists Association, will give us an update on how COVID is currently impacting therapists in his country. Stay tuned. Hi, and welcome to the Wellness Project. Today I'm speaking to Cathy Slarks, who is the spiritual care practitioner at Bowen Health. And she's here with me today to talk to you about both mental health and spiritual well-being. Welcome, Cathy.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. It's lovely to be here in my office looking at you.
It's great. It's great to have you on, and it's going to be kind of interesting. Not everyone knows what a spiritual care practitioner is. So did you want to sort of explain to the folks at home what your role is at Bowen Health?
Yeah, sure. So my position is actually employed through the Uniting Church of Australia, but I am called a spiritual care practitioner within the hospital. And there I deal mainly with how people make connections with themselves, with the world around them, and perhaps with something of a greater or higher being or higher power, how they find purpose in life, and how they make meaning from their experience, meaning from the world around them, and what brings meaning to their life.
Would you suggest that because the way times are at the moment that you're increasingly in demand?
It's an interesting time because when Geelong was in stage 3 lockdown, we actually had to work from home, so we were only allowed in the hospital on a referral basis. Mm-hmm. Now I'm back in the hospital, still restricted in terms of visiting, but a lot of my conversations are around the impact that the restrictions are having on people and their families.
Yeah, no, for sure. And as far as the most rewarding part of your actual position, I mean, what sort of things do you really get a kick out of as far as helping people?
There's so many things. It's particularly I find it honouring when I am able to be present when a patient is about to cross over from this world, when dealing with death and dying with a family, and they allow you to be present to their grief. Mm-hmm. That's really honouring and challenging. But a lot of times in my role, I sit with people when they are in the pit, when they're not going through the best of times, but that in itself is rewarding, I think. Not having to try and bring them up, just to be able to sit with someone in that space, and that is part of my role.
So you mentioned about spiritual well-being being sort of a part of meaning and purpose. What are the top 3 tips that you find for meaning and purpose in someone's life?
Tips is a funny word.
It is, isn't it?
But I might maybe I'll give you like a place to start. Maybe that's kind of it. I sort of think about how really meaning can be made simply by looking out for the extraordinary in the ordinary. It's really about for me anyway, connecting first with nature, because we are nature, and I think we forget that as human beings sometimes. That can be the basis of your spirituality. Lots of people find, connection in nature, even just looking up at the sky every day and marveling and feeling a sense of wonder and awe at the fact that that sky is never going to be exactly the same as it is right in that very moment.
No, for sure. It's interesting to see. I try and get out and walk every evening, and the number of people that are out there walking in nature. Obviously, it's a healthy thing to do. It's something that's encouraged during this time. So maybe, people are experiencing that more so these days.
Yes, I think so. I think that can be a spiritual practice. People probably don't think of it as that, but it definitely can be. Even setting an intention before you go out can help that practice, or even repeating a mantra or something to yourself while you're on your walk. That is a part of a spiritual practice and is a good place to start. I also think that, seeking guides or mentors or, people who can help you along your journey in this life to experience different types of spiritual practice. Maybe you try meditation, but that's not really your thing. Maybe try prayer. Try, there's was it Joseph Campbell? He said, "Follow your bliss."
There you go.
And, and I think that that's definitely a key in finding meaning and purpose, is to follow your bliss.
Many paths to the same truth, eh?
I think so.
Now, on a different note, in a previous lifetime, you were into art therapy, and you mentioned just off air before we started that was something that you are now not doing as much of, but you have still a strong interest in.
Yes, so I studied transpersonal art therapy. So transpersonal meaning the sort of spiritual aspect of a person. So it does sometimes come into my practice as a spiritual care practitioner, but not specifically as an art therapist myself. But it definitely can be a spiritual practice as well. And I think that creativity is part of what not only makes us human, but part of being a spiritual person. I don't think I could be spiritual without my without the joy that I find in creating something, be it drawing, or I'm a huge crochet fan, so I love to crochet. And I find that quite mindful too. But really, art therapy is about exploring personal symbology and what do your own symbols mean. And it's not about, I think it ties in very well with spiritual care, is that it's not about the end product, it's about the process and the journey and what you come through and how you make meaning from that experience.
Oh, it's interesting. I've got a house full of, I won't say kids anymore, but between 21 and 26. And my youngest at the moment is sewing masks. And for her, it's as much about doing something to keep her mind at ease, because, everyone's feeling where we're at the moment. So for her, it's, as you're talking about, it's not the end product as much as just to be able to do something, creative and definitely helpful. So that's kind of, I guess, in a sense, her own sort of art therapy, I guess you could say. Yeah. So it's an important aspect, yeah.
It is.
Now, the other thing that we talked about off air was the concept of gratitude practice. So do you want to tell the folks at home about that and how people can get started in it if they're interested?
Yeah, sure. So it was something that I shared as one of our own spiritual practices for Bowen Health. I have my own set of cards. They're here with me.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I bought them quite a few years ago but they each have something different, a different question. I'll just pick one at random for you.
Yeah.
So this one says, describe a memory that you cherish. I mean, for me, the memory that's coming up for me at the moment is I remember sitting on the balcony when I think I was about 13 or 14 years old with my auntie and in Ackland Street in St Kilda, and she was telling me that I have beautiful lips.
There you go.
And to always wear lipstick. So I appreciate that memory. And my auntie, she died when she was 33, so she's long gone. She died that year that I saw her. But that is a memory that I'm called to cherish in this moment with you, Dave.
Yeah. So people can get hold of those cards. Are they?
These ones were from KKK. They still have something similar, but there are ones that people can search for on the internet as well. And I actually have these on our dinner table, and it's a practice that I like to do with my daughter. She is 18 months old, so mainly it's me talking about what I'm grateful for. But there has been a lot of research into gratitude practice and how much it impacts your health and well-being, and just drawing you back to creating those neural pathways within your brain.
And you're normally doing that practice with other people.
I like to.
Yeah. You could do it solo, but it's also about like sharing a story like you just did, then that was with someone else.
Yeah, sharing with others, and also reflecting on your own too. Can be really beneficial, and writing it down in a diary, and then you do have that to look back on at the end of the year, what you were grateful for. And it can be just simple things too in the day.
Fantastic. Now, Beyond Blue suggests that there are over 3 million Australians at the moment living with anxiety or depression. So can you give the folks at home, if someone is, struggling a little bit, some advice on what to do?
Sure. I was thinking about this, and for me, the best thing you can do is to tell someone. And if you don't have someone that you can tell that's close to you, then call call Beyond Blue or call someone. And I know that they're under a lot of resources are stretched at the moment, but I can't encourage people enough to please tell somebody. It's the most important thing. And I believe that everyone should have a good therapist or mentor or psychologist or counsellor or someone who's on. I guess you feel like they're on your side and they're in your corner.
Sure.
Someone to talk to, because especially nowadays, I think that mental health is, it's really recognised as something that we need to address in the society and talk more about. So I think that's the best thing you can do. And for me and my own mental health and well-being, I have gone off most of social media, and that has made such a huge difference to my mental health and well-being. And I think during this time of the COVID restrictions too, is that everyone is not only going through this overlay of difficulty, but everyone has their own story behind their front door. And so we all have to not only deal with the restrictions of COVID-19, but also deal with anything else that was also already going on that might be exacerbated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good point.
And sometimes staying off social media for some time can just give your head that space that it needs.
Or maybe be a little selective, like watching this wellness project on our association Facebook page.
Yes, be selective.
Be selective. is good.
Be selective with what you let in, and
Yeah,
that's what you can be. If watching the news and having it on all the time in the background is, distressing you, you can choose to turn that off.
yeah,
You
exactly.
can choose what you watch and what you let in to your life.
Absolutely. The last episode we had a lady called Ronna Moore who is setting up some what she calls mini meditations, which will go up on our website shortly. And Ronna works at Peter Mac, so she's working in that sort of, I guess, oncology, palliative sort of scene with touch. Now, the science shows that touch is great for lowering blood pressure and decreasing stress hormones, etc. So, as far as mental health, can you understand, and you would agree that there's great benefit to touch, and people are probably missing it right now, yeah?
Definitely. At the hospital, we've been running some aromatherapy sessions for staff to support their mental health and well-being during this time. And we've been doing personal hand massage. So, of course, we can't massage their hands, but we're teaching them how to massage their own hands, and that it is something that they have access to all the time. And you're so right, touch is such an important thing, and usually we're able to offer hand massage to our dialysis patients, but it's something that we unfortunately can't do at the moment, but
right
we
now.
do recognise that it is it's essential to being human.
Absolutely. Well, Cathy, it's been wonderful to have you on the show today, so I appreciate your time and effort getting onto Skype for us today. We had a few bugs. This is actually the second interview I've done today, and unfortunately both the interviewees had issues. So it's just be one of those days. Just got to go with the flow. But it's been lovely to talk to you about what you do. It's must be incredibly satisfying, the work that you do. When you were talking about those last moments with someone is an incredible experience. I just reflect back on how you hear in the news of people who have the virus and who are in their last moments. A lot of them are alone at the moment. They don't have that amazing support around them, which is terrible, isn't it?
Yes, it's a very difficult time for people and for their friends and families, especially with the visiting hour restrictions and the visitor restrictions and all of that. So it's quite distressing for the family.
Absolutely. And our numbers are still, relatively small as far as daily occurrences, people catching the virus. I was speaking with someone from Texas earlier on this week, and they'd hit over 10,000 daily occurrence, new cases, over 10,000. So it's and again, I reflect back to that comment about your last moments on Earth, and you've got no one to share that with. It's and that's magnified even more with people overseas. There's so many people in that situation. It's horrible. So yeah, we've all just got to try and make sure that we do the best we can with the virus at the moment. And mental health is a big part of that, because again, this is something that last year we weren't thinking, oh, this is how I'm going to be feeling when the virus hits. This is something that no one expected. So it's a struggle for everyone. So it's been great to have you on and to share, for a better word, tips. That was a terrible word, wasn't it? Who wrote these questions? But for people to find meaning and purpose in their lives is a really important thing. So again, thanks for sharing your thoughts. Thank you everyone at home for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Hey folks, welcome to the Wellness Project. Now, once again, we've got Aubrey Gowing from Dublin, Ireland. Welcome, Aubrey.
Hi, Dave. How you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing okay. Hey, it's been 4 months since our very first Wellness Project, and we had you on for that particular installment, the first installment. Now, since then, we've had around about 6,000 unique views to that particular installment, which is fantastic. We've had some lovely feedback from viewers. So here we are trooping on again. So I really appreciate you coming back on board today for the show.
That's absolutely.
Now, we thought we'd do a little bit of a comparison because looking at, dug down and looked at some of the figures just recently as far as Ireland for daily cases compared to Australia, and we seem to be tracking in a similar way. And I'm going to pop the graphic up there, and you can see that there's quite a bit of a zigzag going on, sort of since almost the beginning of August. So did you want to sort of explain, does that reflect changes in restrictions? I mean, what does that actually reflect?
Yeah, I think it's as we were coming out of a staged lockdown. There was originally 5 stages to the lockdown, and then because numbers were staying quite low, they accelerated that process a certain amount. So I think a lot of that was expected, that as people started to interact a little bit more, there would be a little bit more kind of hotspots. There'll be different outbreaks. We've seen a few of these, particularly around factory workers. And I think the most recent seems to be with kids going back to school, because that was quite a phase. Like, they were very careful about how they did it. There was a phased response. They brought groups in, even within the same school year. They would bring different classes in. They might have 2 coming in at an earlier time, 2 at a later time. So they've taken a very cautious approach, but I think it's just the nature of people starting to interact again. They still haven't opened the pubs here, which is a big deal for Ireland. If they serve food, they can, but as they call it, wet pubs haven't been able to open. So I think that has had a certain impact on people's attitude, kind of morale a little bit as well. Just the idea that, we're not out of this, still in progress. What has been interesting, though, is they have continued to say that the number of fatalities, fortunately, are staying very low. That while the case numbers are going up, the hospitals aren't being overwhelmed, that they still consider to be reasonably in control. They're not looking at going back a step as yet, but they are obviously concerned and monitoring closely.
Well, your numbers have steadily decreased since around about April. And again, looking at that graphic, you can see that there was a massive spike that occurred around about the 20th of April that the graphic shows. And there has been a couple of spikes along the way, but generally speaking, it has backed off. And as you said, to a controllable level, which is what we are trying to get to here as well. Just for the sake of a sort of a timestamp moment here. So Victoria today, which is where I am, which is where most of the daily occurrences are, we're sort of hovering around 70 to 90 daily cases, down from 300 to 400, even higher actually during the second wave. So interestingly enough, I look back on our little chat 4 months ago, and I know that we weren't in a sort of a lockdown scenario back then here in Victoria, which we are now. But I look back and I just had a chuckle because I thought we did it bad. We've got a 5-kilometre radius for our 1 hour exercise. I think you mentioned there's only 2.
Yeah, initially we had a 2-kilometre limit. I was very fortunate because the college is literally 2 kilometres from my home, so I was able to go down occasionally, just check on the place. But yeah, it was very restrictive, but I think there was actually great support from the public here, that people really did take it seriously. And I think that's why you saw such a sudden drop, that people really did take the measures on board. They did abide by the guidelines. And I think that really did show. It did have quite a positive impact.
Well, probably looking at your neighbours in the UK. So again, taking a graphic, they're up around 1,400 still daily cases. So obviously the strategy is quite different, and I don't want to get too political. I don't want to get in trouble. I got in trouble last time I spoke to you, actually talking about our Victorian Premier by a couple of people. But there's obvious differences in the way you guys are going about it to the UK.
Yeah, I think a certain amount of it is population size as well. I mean, the Irish population size is way smaller. I mean, we're at about 5.5 million. They're at about 58 million. So I think a good way to look at that is to look at it kind of as a per capita figure. That they talk about the kind of the ratios or percentages aren't actually that dissimilar. I mean, the UK's cases are generally higher. But I think it is to a fair extent that the Irish have taken this very seriously, as I'm sure they have in many jurisdictions. But I think it is that kind of adherence in the early stage seemed to make the biggest difference. And I think small spikes that you see now, a certain amount of those are kind of the 5-6 days after a change from one phase to another. So I do think that that's kind of inevitable, that as people start to mingle, there is going to be some higher degree of case number. But always what they're looking at really is management. I mean, it is this kind of risk-benefit type balance that is always trying to be struck. And I think they've done a pretty good job in most jurisdictions. There's very few places that seem to be completely running out of control. I mean, obviously it is concerning, but the odd thing is the politicization of some of these things as well, which is always makes things difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as your massage college, where are we at with where? And I've got to say to the viewers at home once again, I think I did the first time. You're a man of many hats. So president of the Irish Massage Association, you run your own massage college. You run workshops. You're obviously we talked about you being an author, and we're going to talk a little bit about that to see where you're at with your writings at the moment as well. But as far as the colleges, I'm assuming massage colleges are closed still, or?
We're starting to open. So our office would have opened in early August. And we were largely doing kind of administration, looking after enrollments for the coming term. We tend to have kind of two traditional intakes here for our courses. We have a September intake. It's really late September, early October. And then we have a March intake. So for this period of time, we've largely, like the office has been open, but we haven't had any classes. So this weekend is actually our first course back, where we're doing one of our little short CBD modules. We have another short training module the following weekend. And then we kind of start back into our regular training schedule, where we'll have our holistic massage guys back, our sports massage, a lot of our kind of ongoing courses. Seminars, however, are a different story. As you know, I should be just back from Australia and Singapore around now.
Yep.
We had been under normal travel arrangements if there hadn't been a pandemic.
You're also supposed to be heading off to Eric Dalton's retreat too in September, correct?
Yeah, that should be this weekend. Yeah, and they took the same steps. They've decided to push that out. They are still talking about Costa Rica in November, so I'm looking forward to that. I would say I was hoping to have my graphic up of the classroom in Costa Rica, because it's my favorite classroom in the world. It's just beautiful, the place that they run it.
I've seen so many photos and some video footage as well. It looks spectacular. He's been doing it for a number of years, so he's well established and got the place all sussed out. So that's fantastic. Hey, what about workshops? So internally within Ireland, you're saying that there's no go for that at the moment. And as far as travel restrictions, did you want to break that down? I mean, are you able to travel to the UK?
No. So Ireland has, there's what they call their green list. There's a small number of countries that have either a similar or lower level daily caseload of COVID cases reported. So they have a small number of countries, but I think people are very unsure about travel for a couple of different reasons. One reason would be when they initially launched the green list, I think there was 14 countries on it, and then they dropped about 4 of them. When they reviewed this like 2 weeks later. Obviously, these things fluctuate. But it gave people a lack of security about traveling, because they're going, well, I might travel to a green list country, and either before I travel or even when I get there, it may no longer be a green list country, which means I'll have to have 2 weeks of isolation when I come home. It'll affect work and so on. So people really aren't traveling internationally, even though they can. They really are kind of restricting it to essential travel. Although there has been a couple of scandals here with politicians traveling and things like that. People have resigned.
Above the law.
So people, yeah, well, oftentimes they are seen to be not following the spirit of the law, even though they may not have actually broken the law.
Okay.
If they're advising everybody else to stay home and they're traveling, for optics, it doesn't look good.
No, for sure. Now, last time we spoke, Aubrey, we talked. You talked in terms of having your head down and working super hard on 2 new books. So where are we at with the books? And what are they? Just to remind people, because not everyone's seen the first episode.
Yeah. Well, I suppose now that a lot of massage clinics have gone back, you mentioned about some of my other hats, being president of the Irish Massage Therapists Association. That took a huge amount of time looking through research, making recommendations, acting as an interface really between our members and government. And it was a hugely involved process, like literally took up several months. So great to get all that work done, but also nice to have it finished. Massage therapists are back. So that's given me time to get back to these projects. and they are online courses. So originally I was going to do 2 books, but what we've decided to do is there's 2 separate courses. There's a taping strategies for the lower body and taping strategies for the upper body. And then there's going to be an actual physical textbook. So you get there's obviously text with each of those courses. There's really thorough video. So we go through taping applications, literally like how to apply the tape start to finish. We talk about layered taping and so on. So it's great to see it in video because I think it conveys a lot more than just stills. But there's also, we've added a lot of assessment because I always think that's an important part. Like, how do you know what taping is required? So we've added in a whole ton. I think there's over 45 assessments. There's a whole heap of video. So all of that has now gone into one actual physical book. So there is assessments for the lower body, taping for the lower body, assessments for the upper body, taping for the upper body. There's information on the principles. So we talk about the different types of assessments because I think sometimes people just get stuck in a rut on the assessments that they do. They might just do muscle resistance tests. So we talk about what is postural assessment for, how is it used, muscle resistance tests versus muscle length tests, active tests versus passive tests, what do they tell you, special tests, that it really kind of gives context to what are each of these assessments about and why is it relevant? Why should you be including it as part of your therapy practice? So it's very, very thorough. I like the fact that it's not only following the concepts and the protocols that we use in therapy, so where we talk about muscles having a tendency, to be habitually shortened or habitually weak, the taping pattern follows that in a very logical kind of way. But you can actually now get the assessment. So if you're going, well, do I need to do this? You can go and look at the assessment, test the person, see if they need a particular taping. If we're saying, one of the things I think is really useful is we talk a lot about the typical dysfunction. So, if this muscle has a problem, this is likely what it's going to be.
Sure.
Flexors are predictably tight in most people. So it kind of follows on from that. It gives you the typical dysfunction, but then you can go and assess it and see, well, does this person present with the typical dysfunction or are they atypical? And how is that then going to influence the taping that I apply?
Fantastic.
So
yeah.
That in its final phases, like literally I was putting some of the finishing touches to it last night. So we hope to launch with that probably within the next 10 days.
I can't think of a text that actually goes and takes that next depth into. Yeah. A lot of texts sit at that assessment level only. So it'd be a very good read. Now, I do need to backtrack because I did forget to ask you about massage therapists in clinic, and you did slide over that just quickly. So they are back in clinic, is that right? And it's probably looking a little different to what it did before COVID.
Yeah, I think that the main difference in terms of the interactions is partly pre-screening before a client comes in and then the use of PPE. But other than that, the therapy hasn't really changed that much. I'd say a lot of therapists are really noticing the amount of time that they spend cleaning each day, between clients, that there's a much higher requirement. There's a little bit more paperwork with contact tracing. But one of the things I said from the very start that has been a fortunate side benefit of this pandemic response is I think people are embracing a lot of technology, people who would have been technophobic in the past. And you see this in things like people using online pre-screening forms, more integration of technology into the process. And I think that's really good. It makes it very streamlined for clients, but it's also easy for record keeping because it's electronic records. You're not keeping stacks and stacks of paper.
Yeah,
it's also easier.
It's an increase in efficiencies within their clinical setting.
Yeah. So I think a lot of therapists are actually finding there's a lot of improvements in their running procedures because they've had to reevaluate everything, look at how they're doing things, why are they doing things traditionally a particular way. And I think it's helped actually improve the not just the running of the clinic, but also I think people feel the benefit of the mental break that I think initially people thought it was going to be a really onerous thing to have to do all this extra cleaning. But they're finding it gives them a little bit of mental space between treatments, that you have a breather, that you're very fresh coming into your next client, your next treatment. And I think a lot of therapists are actually finding it quite a good balance overall.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good play on where we're at here too. In most states, there is certain levels of clinics open. In our state at the moment, because of our stage 4, we're not at that stage, but we're hoping to get back into clinics soon. Now, lastly, actually, there are two things that I wanted to mention. One, you're incredibly patriotic to the Irish flag. I can see that you've got an interesting background there, Aubrey. That must be a very, very large flag in your house or office or wherever you might be.
This is actually a recent arrival. This is a new purchase. It's a green screen. Because we're creating a lot more online content now, we figured a green screen was going to give us a lot more versatility. But today, for some reason, I had camera difficulties, the usual technical things, and wasn't able to get up my virtual background. So apologies, everybody. This isn't some homage to my Irish heritage. This is just a unfortunate green screen that we didn't have a virtual background
It's
for.
perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And the last thing is that you did mention that you did take to your hair on your own. You did a self haircut. So where are we at with
Yeah,
that? Well, we've got to finish off on a light note here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I actually thought I'd get to cut my hair again yesterday. I've done it about 3 times now, and I think I'm getting a little bit better. I noticed the time is getting shorter at least. I don't know if the haircut quality is getting better, but at least I'm getting it done quicker.
Perfect.
But no, unfortunately, writing yesterday, I didn't get a chance to cut it, so I'll send a pic when I do, Dave. I'll
Perfect.
update you.
All right, no worries, mate. Hey, once again, Aubrey, it's been fantastic talking to you today. We're going to air, this is being pre-recorded around about 6 days before we go to air next week. So let's hope things are progressing again in the right direction. In a week's time, we're looking at an even better scenario in both countries. So let's touch base again a little bit down the track and see where we're at. But it's been lovely to share the journey with you. So I appreciate your time. Yeah, of course.
Sorry for cutting across you, because
Yeah.
you mentioned about this going live next week, that there's a couple of virtual conferences coming up. Yeah, so I'm going to be speaking at the Polish Fascial Symposium. So I don't know if you guys have a large Polish contingent in Australia, but the video that I submitted is going to be dubbed in Polish. So for people who are Polish language, they're actually dubbing it over. So it's a whole symposium. There's loads of different speakers, big international guys. Art Riggs is doing it, Till Luca. But we're also going to be doing a live Q&A as well. And then in September, there's the Canadian Massage Therapist Conference. So there's, again, a lot of big names: Eric Dalton, James Wazlowski, myself. And we're going to be presenting at that as well. So a couple of online opportunities for people. I know we're possibly planning on doing something in the future, so looking forward to that. But there is stuff for people to do if you're locked down.
That's it. There's plenty to do. That's absolutely correct. All right, Aubrey, once again, many thanks, and you take care over there.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Talk to you soon.
Cheers. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.